morning, I'm Drew Post and welcome to this edition of DateLine ETTV. For many, cellular telephones and pagers have become an integral part of their daily lives, serving both as a tool for communication and a fashion statement. In a society where cell phones are now as ubiquitous as credit cards and televisions, there are still organizations that are stuck in the past when it comes to adapting to technology. As many of you may know, California has in place what many consider to be an archaic regulation banning the use of electronic signaling devices under which cell phones fall. There is now a movement afoot to take this regulation and amend it to fit into a modern setting. This has, however, stirred the pot and caused a fear over just whether or not cell phones should even be allowed in school. This is that story.
Well, you know, the law doesn't ban just cell phones. The actual education code, which we all adhere to, and also which reflects the law as it currently is stated, not only refers to cell phones, but any electronic signaling device.
I think the cell phone law is a unneeded thing. I think that they shouldn't be used in class, and I think it's just like having like a graphing calculator with games or something. It's not. I mean, it's not supposed to be used in class like that. But I mean, that's snack and lunch after school. There's times when people need to get in contact with other people, and so to permanently ban like the use of a tool is just like saying to a caveman that he can't use fire or something. It's ridiculous that we don't embrace technology more.
It probably started off with an idea that it was aimed at pagers more than anything. And pagers originally were suspect because law enforcement people and school authorities felt that some students may be using pagers for illegal activity.
Surprisingly enough, many of the administrators and teachers at El Toro felt that the ban on cell phones and electronic signaling devices was outdated.
In my view, the law is outmoded, antiquated. Technology has changed in the 10 years or more that it's been passed. Cell phones used to be something that only, it would appear, drug dealers could afford, and that was the reasoning behind not allowing them. These days, cell phones are a useful tool for parents to keep in touch with their students.
And so we have the advent of cell phones almost in every typical household, and in most families you'll have 2 to 3 cell phones in which they can communicate with each other.
If we have terrorist acts, as we have done, we've seen that these things can be quite useful. Columbine, a lot of kids were able to contact their parents because they had cell phones. I think that it would be fine to set up a system whereby cell phones were set on a silent mode, a buzzer perhaps, and if a parent had to get in touch with their kid, they could call in and the kid could simply look at it. It would be minimally distracting, and I don't see any serious problem with that.
I think the ban on cell phones on public school campuses is a good idea because it keeps kids from having the ability to distract others from learning in classes when teachers are trying to teach. And I just think that, I mean, what the Assemblyman said, that, you know, we have a law that a lot of people aren't obeying, so does that make the law obsolete? No, I don't think so, because, you know, we have teens that are drinking all over the place, and so they're ignoring that law. Does that mean we should cut the drinking age, legal age of 21? No, it doesn't make sense. People would say that's an outrage. I think it's the same thing.
Our intent with the legislation at this point is to have the legislation say that the current law, which is that you may not use an electronic device, including a cell phone, on school campus or at any school-sponsored event, that the current law would prevail and would be the case unless a school district adopts a policy to the contrary, and that any school district would be allowed to adopt a different policy permitting or allowing cell phones on campus but not in a classroom.
Teachers and administrators want to make sure that it doesn't impede the educational process. We want to make sure the sanctity of the classroom is being protected. And quite frankly, my personal view is that we have a tremendous proliferation of cell phones all over the place, not only at schools but out in society in general.
I think it is something that is a safety benefit. My sophomore son at University High in Irvine has a cell phone. We bought him one probably about 6 or 7 months ago, and asked him to take it to school and carry it with him all the time, so we can get a hold of him if we need to, or if there's some emergency we need to get a hold of him, and he can get a hold of us if there's some emergency.
I understand 9/11, you know, September 11th. I understand the society that we're living in. I also understand wholeheartedly that we have many people on this campus that carry cell phones. What we want to do, however, is make sure that, again, classroom instruction is not interrupted, that that's protected. We have methods in place that if somebody in a true emergency has to be contacted, we can do that for them. I would hate to see somebody on a cell phone in the middle of a discussion of Hamlet in an English class. That to me would just be something we don't want to do.
You need to have a cell phone. But if you're in class and it goes off, that's rude. You're going to get it taken away. So just don't be stupid. Just have it on silent and everything will be fine.
I think outlawing cell phones at school is a very good thing. And if it were up to me too, I'd outlaw pens and pencils also.
I think that you should be able to have your cell phones in class as long as they're on silent or on vibrate. But I can also see where they're coming from because it could disrupt learning and no one would want that. But if there's an emergency or something or information needs to be brought to you, what faster than a cell phone? What faster way than a cell phone?
I don't think it's really cool because after school if you need to call your parents and tell them that you need a ride home or something, you can't call them. And it's not really bad because as long as you turn them off during class, then it's fine.
I don't mind cell phones as long as they don't go off in the middle of class, so then they're not annoying.
We can't use the payphones.
We can't use the phones in the office unless we're sick.
And sometimes we just need to call home.
It's important.
At the moment, I have two Democrats actually who it looks like we're all going to join together as joint authors of this bill, and so we're crafting the legislation. It's one of the things you find that in a democracy, and that's the way it should be, legislation is not what one person says and that's it and it goes together. So there's several of us working on this to try and bring this together so we can get not just majority, but hopefully almost unanimous support for this legislation, and that means that it's a little bit of compromise, a little bit of push and pull, a little bit of back and forth. So I can't tell you at this point exactly how the legislation will wind up at the end because there will be a lot of other people involved with it. And you know what? That's just as it should be, because if it's anything else, it's not a democracy, it's a dictatorship, and that's not what we're about.